Hello everybody, welcome to my first ever video of Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader, my new obsession. I don't play tabletop Warhammer, but I have been consuming 40k's stories and settings for several years, so I'm glad now there is finally a CRPG for it. In this first video of my playthrough, I will walk you through how I created my character and explain a little what this and that means. Hope I can do a nice onboarding for those who are interested in this game but not familiar enough with 40k's world. Before anything, if you want your story to feel immersive, I recommend you choose the Daring difficulty instead of the default one. The default one is a little too easy, doesn't really represent 40k's world in my opinion. When creating your character, the game gives you a lot of portraits to choose from. This will be pretty much entirely where your fantasy comes from, because the models are pretty lo-fi and distant compared to games like Baldur's Gate 3. If you don't like the portraits they provide, the game allows you to upload custom portraits. I know 40k's default style is not that appealing to many people, but the game doesn't have a built-in generator, so you will need to make the portraits yourself. I have created a few. If you want to use them, you can find the download link down below in the description. Okay, the customization you can do to your character is very detailed, which I like, though you can only be a human. First, you need to choose your home world. This means what kind of a planet you come from. They call each planet a world because humans are already scattered all over the galaxy. A death world means a planet with an extremely dangerous environment. This homeworld is good for a frontline warrior build. Voidborn means you don't come from a planet at all. Maybe you grew up on a spaceship or an orbital station or things like that. This homeworld is good for a caster build or any ranged build, and in my opinion is the best for utility. A hive world means a population planet, and I mean a lot of population. Think about the densest parts of China and India, but in dozens of layers. This homeworld is good if your team prefers to cluster together, but is weak against magic and control. A Forge world is a planet controlled by the Machine Church Adeptus Mechanicus. The whole planet is a giant factory. This homeworld is pretty customizable and has a focus on high-tech weapons. It's also good for utility too. An Imperial world means any of the not-so-special planets in the human Imperium. This homeworld is the most customizable when it comes to ability scores, but it doesn't work well if you want to cooperate with aliens. A fortress world means a planet on the front line against aliens or chaos demons. This homeworld gives you outstanding output in combat but makes you weak outside of combat. After the homeworld, you need to choose your origin, which means your background profession. This is half of your class if you compare to D&D. It will affect your story here and there. An Astra Militarum Commander is a commander from Human's Ground Army. This origin is good for a frontline physical build. It can provide whole party buffs and can prevent friendly fire. A Commissar is an officer in Human's Ground Army in charge of maintaining authority and censoring thoughts. This origin also provides whole party buffs. It also has a focus on momentum, which is what your team needs to use their super skills. A Crime Lord is good at damage, dodging, and debuffing, but you can only do one of them at a time. This origin is also good for utility. A Ministerium Priest is a priest of Human's state church, the Ecclesiarchy. This is another origin that provides whole party buffs and momentum, and it's strong against the demons and casters. A Navy officer is an officer from Human's space army. This origin is good at protecting and buffing itself along with nearby allies. The Noble origin focuses on single target buff and mutual enhancing. It's a quite interesting setting. And finally, a Sanctioned Psyker is a caster deemed safe by the Human Imperium. Psyker is what they call caster in 40k. They don't really have a thing called magic, it's called psychic abilities. Sanctioned means you have been filtered by the Imperium and your magic is labeled as safer than the unsanctioned ones. By the way, unsanctioned psykers are illegal. And without surprise, I'm choosing Sanctioned Psyker here. Then, if you choose Psyker, You get an additional page choosing your discipline. Compared to D&D, this is like choosing a magic school to specialize in. A biomancer can manipulate biological processes. It focuses on single target buffs and debuffs on the physical side. This is also the discipline for healing. A diviner is a seer. It focuses on buffs on the mental or spiritual side, but it also has a few physical buffs for protection. This discipline can also make people act faster. A pyromancer focuses on AoE damage. I think it doesn't need much explanation. A sanctic is a psyker who channels the sacred power of the God Emperor. The God Emperor is the human Imperium's one true god. He currently sits indefinitely in humans' capital on Earth and is functioning as the core of the Imperium. This discipline can deal damage, provide buffs, and heal, and its damage becomes stronger against the aliens, heretics, and demons. A telepath is a mind breacher. This discipline focuses on debuffs and control and, surprisingly, single target damage. It can also provide a few buffs, and this is the one I will choose. Then we need to choose our triumph. This is a part of our background story. It gives a bonus for a skill and will affect your story in some places. Then, the darkest hour. This is another part of our background story. We need to choose to get a minus on one skill. Then we need to choose our archetype. This is the other half of our class. The warrior is for melee weapon fighting, the soldier is for ranged weapon fighting, the officer is for support builds, and the operative is good for casters and any control builds. Then we need to set our original characteristics. Weapon skill is about the chance to parry against the enemy's melee attacks, as well as the chance to bypass their parry. It's one of the 3 skills that determine how often you can land your melee attacks. The other 2 are agility and perception. They increase your chance to prevent the enemies from dodging your melee attacks, but none of them increases the damage you deal with melee weapons. Strength is the one for melee weapon damage. Ballistic skill is about your chance to land ranged weapon attacks. Toughness increases your wounds, which is what HP is called in 40k. It also increases your chance of avoiding negative effects. Agility also increases your initiative rolls and your chance to dodge attacks. Intelligence increases the damage you deal with non-burst ranged attacks. It's also an important one for utility. Perception is about your ability to notice things, and its dodge reduction works for both melee and ranged attacks. Willpower increases the effectiveness of most spells, and it increases your resistance to mental control. Fellowship is another good one for utility. It's like a charisma in D&D. It also enhances most support abilities. Okay, then we need to name our void ship. If you don't want to name it yourself, the game has a generator for you. You can just choose one. It's the same for your character's name. We can just generate and choose one. Okay, this is my character. From now on, I will be uploading my playthrough. I've already uploaded the prologue. There will be a link at the end of this video. Again, for the portraits I created, the download link is down below in the description. And if you like this video, please click the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.